Well, good evening and welcome everyone to another evening here in the loft for a spiritual science loft talk. Spiritual science as social activism and self-initiation. Very excited with tonight's topic. I want to ask you, do you want the good news first or the bad news first?
Good news.
The good news first?
Yes.
Really?
With snacks.
The good news, yes, we've got snacks at break time. This is the good news. So the topic tonight is called Why 5G and Ancient Egyptian Energy Science Should Meet and Hook Up. There's a marriage there between 5G and ancient Egyptian energy science. And there is hope in their meeting, despite all the doom and gloom, that there is potentially a silver cloud within the very large cloud, a silver lining within the very large cloud of doom and gloom that's currently hanging over humanity and the planet at large at this time. And with us tonight is myself speaking, and Laura Story is going to be speaking. And I have also a guest speaker, an expert on technological issues and energy science, who is going to remain off camera and be anonymous because he's read books like The Rise of Conspiracy Culture Capitalism.
Rise of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. This is, I don't want to take too long. This is a really intense book that is probably the most important book I read this year anyways, and it's long. She has videos too, but this tells you exactly what's going on, whether you want to know it or not. Sorry.
Mm-hmm. So our guest speaker, who will remain anonymous, and we'll refer to him as Doug. Call you Doug for tonight. Is referring to a book called The Rise of Surveillance Capitalism by Shoshana Zuboff. So he'd just as soon remain anonymous, but nonetheless feels the subject matter is important enough to be here and speak tonight, and to have it broadcast on Facebook Live and our video that's going to go out on the YouTube channel. So first, I'm going to speak a little bit about what I know and what I've researched on 5G, and then Doug will fill in the blanks. We'll take a little break, and then we will move into more of the silver lining within the cloud of doom and gloom around 5G. What is 5G? Well, first of all, 1G is what gave us that initial generation of being able to speak to each other wirelessly. Those big clunky telephones in the beginning where we could talk to each other. 2G allowed us to send messages wirelessly through the phones and digital network. And then 3G gave us the broadband that allowed the internet to travel wirelessly and data. And then 4G made the speeds faster, going up to 10 to 20 megabytes per second. And now the 5G, the fifth generation of wireless digital technology, is going to be 100 to 150 times faster, traveling at 200 gigabytes, or 20 gigabytes per second as opposed to 20 megabytes per second. So 20 gigabytes per second as opposed to 20 megabytes per second. So 100 times faster. So what is the end game? What is really the vision and the purpose behind this rollout of 5G, the fifth generation? In an acronym, instead of in a word, in an acronym, IoT. Anybody know what IoT?
Internet of Things.
The Internet of Things. the Internet of Things. You heard that buzzword? This thing keeps turning. It's got a mind of its own here. There we go. Internet of Things, which I'll read to you. I went and looked this up in the Holy Gospel of Knowledge, the Wikipedia. Is the Internet of Things, the IoT, is a system of interrelated computing devices, mechanical and digital machines, objects, animals, or people that are provided with unique identifiers, UIDs, and the ability to transfer data over a network without requiring human to human or even human to computer interaction. So what does that mean? What does that look like? It's just machines talking to machines. Machines are doing all the work and machines are doing all the talking. Sound a bit like the Matrix? Indeed. So the 5G, the fifth generation of wireless communication, is to facilitate this Internet of Things, this Internet of everything, because more and more things are going to be provided with these UIDs, these unique identifier, digital identifiers that will allow them to store and communicate information about themselves, so we can live wirelessly and tirelessly in the digital age, allowing these machines to think and work for us. Sounds pretty good in some ways. Yeah, I'm not against the idea of using digital technology. We're using that tonight here with our going on Facebook Live and so forth. So what's the issue? What is the issue and concern around 5G? Basically, it's the frequency intensity and the high pulsation levels. The frequency intensity and high pulsation levels. The 4G signal could travel up to 10 miles, but the 5G does not travel well because of this pulsation level. It has shorter waves, higher frequencies that can only travel about 1,000 feet, as opposed to 10 miles with the older 4G network. So it has less than a 2% range that our current 4G LTE network has. And because of the wave of the 5G, it's affected by walls. It has difficulty with walls, trees, bad weather, and so forth. Knocks down the signal. So as a result, they've been knocking down trees to prepare the way for the 5G signal. There's been a lot of cutting down of trees. Big trees, obviously. The big old trees are being knocked down to create less disturbance for the signal. So because of the short range that 5G has, it's going to require tens of millions of antennas to be put up basically everywhere. Every lamppost, every traffic light signal, every corner, everywhere they can, they're going to be putting up these smallish antennas to facilitate the movement of the 5G signal. And we're already seeing these antennas going up. If you look up, you're going to see them popping up like mushrooms everywhere, getting ready for the rollout of 5G. And yeah, corporations getting themselves in position for the money that they're going to make on this new level of digital communication. So not only is there going to be the need for tens of millions of antennas going up in cities and then eventually out into the suburbs and then out into the country, there's a plan to put up about 20,000 more satellites into outer space to be circulating around the planet. So basically, every nook and cranny, every corner, every piece of turf is going to be receiving these focused beams of microwave radiation beaming at us from outer space down here on this level. And the radiation from these 5G antennas is 100 times in excess of the current Wi-Fi signal strength. It's 100 times stronger than what is currently there. And in fact, the levels are 1 quadrillion times greater than the Earth's natural radiation. 1 quadrillion. Is that
Quadrillion?
quadrillion? Yeah. Stronger than the Earth's natural radiation. Yeah, quadrillion.
It's a lot.
It's a lot. So really, there's no way to opt out of this. There's no way to opt out, like, trying to opt out of having a smart meter. There's no way to opt out, and there's really nowhere to hide, because the whole Earth's going to be blanketed with this level of frequency in due time. And apparently this technology, greetings, is it's based on military technology, the same kind of technology they use to scatter crowds, to scatter mobs when they want to break up a riot or whatever. They can direct these energy beams at crowds. The levels of 5G won't be as high as what they use in these military operations, but it is apparently the same technology, same bandwidth, and so forth.
If you want, look up active dispersal systems and Google that. I think there's some videos you can watch it being used.
Active dispersal systems.
Yeah. ADS.
Yes. And I have one here actually, so at the end of the night I'm going to try it on everybody to just break up the crowd we got
Make
here.
them go home.
Make them go home so I can go to bed. And yeah, it might be handy, when you're trying to get on a packed subway and all these people in front of you, just have this little thing in your pocket. Of course, maybe it'll just be built right into your smartphone. Beam people with 5G. So, yeah, with the concerns around this and the fact that it's rolling out, it's happening. It's going to be happening. It's already happening, but they're proclaiming that it's going to be in the next year or two, landing and people being able to get access to it.
People need to understand 5G is not one frequency. It's actually, think of it as a little basket of frequencies. Some are lower, some are higher. The idea is that you use multiple frequencies to transmit multiple forms of information at the fastest possible speed. The ones that have not been auctioned off yet are the most dangerous, in my opinion. Those are the 70 to 90 gigahertz, which those frequencies have only been used in the past for military application. Never has there been civilian applications of those frequencies. It's important to remember we are very low electrical beings. So we run on, there's a bit of discrepancy that varies from person to person. Let's say we run on about 1/3 of a volt. Okay? Wall, 110 volts, 220 volts.
And electrical sockets.
Yeah, and we evolved under a frequency which is the Schumann resonance, which is 8 cycles. So between 8 cycles and 80 or 90 gigahertz cycles is such a gigantic difference, which is what you were referring to before. We have no basic adaptation for that, really, except maybe on the esoteric side, which we'll get to.
Yes, we'll get to the esoteric side. So yeah, some of the concerns is around what is the fallout of modern technology that has come on so quickly, just in a matter of a few decades, and the question around our adaptability to the frequencies. Of course, there's the rise of cancers in our time, especially brain cancer. No surprise with people walking around holding electronic digital devices next to the head that are sending and receiving signals. The 4 top things that are killing kids currently in our times is brain tumors, thyroid cancer, testicular cancer, and rectal cancer. All areas where people are holding smartphones or carrying them in their pockets. We're seeing a rise of genetic defects in children being born due to something that's affecting the embryo and the fetus. Currently, 1 in 6 Americans is infertile, cannot have children, 1 in 6. Last year saw the biggest drop in sperm count in men, which has been dropping for some time now and continues to plummet. And there's rock solid data on all of this about how the quantity and quality of sperm is being damaged in males. So modern problems such as, for example, a daughter being born with damaged ovaries because the mother was exposed to radiation. This may not be detected in the daughter. It won't be seen until the daughter herself has a daughter. And so the granddaughter, the woman who was exposed to radiation, shows the damaged results of that radiation exposure passed through the damaged ovaries of the mother. And this can take 3 to 5 generations to be healed and be rectified, to be remedied, which is a 150-year span. And we're talking about generations to recover from radiation damage. Growing concerns about Wi-Fi in schools. Wireless frequencies being put into schools where kids spend 6, 7, 8 hours a day in an environment that's blanketed with this radiation.
And I would say not just blanketed, but blanketed from the ceiling. So let's keep in mind children have it's called the fontanelle. So top of the head is very thin and gradually closes over a period of time. So they are much more sensitive than receiving a beam at head level direct, or an adult would be.
The beams coming from above?
Normally they're mounted in the ceilings in order to get good, coverage.
Coverage, yeah, so they can cover those fontanelles with radiation.
Exactly.
So yeah, there's lots of concerns about how this is affecting children's learning capacity. Is it leading to a rise in the autism spectrum disorder? Is it contributing to a rise in Alzheimer's?
Isn't it in France that they banned? Is it all over France, no? That they banned wireless
In schools.
Yeah.
France has banned wireless in schools. Oh, interesting.
Switzerland had the government pay schools to take out wireless and put in corded solutions.
There's definitely a rising pushback, and that's one of the reasons we wanted to have this talk here tonight, is to alert people and inform people about the dangers, about the concerns. Perhaps there's a need for pushback, or there might be other solutions. There is talk of other solutions, other forms of technology that could be used, and even older technology, ancient Egyptian energy science that may also be used in conjunction with this new technology, which is really an exciting possibility. But let's ask the question: Why is there this push? Why is there a big push to roll out this new technology? And why are the industries really not taking the time to consider what would be the damaging effects of it, and why they're not doing proper testing, and why, in the end, we end up being the lab subjects for this. So yeah, there's trillions of dollars being spent to bring out this new technology, because obviously there's as much, if not more, money to be made. Follow the money, as they say. But it's not just so that we get faster download speeds for our movies. It's because of this Internet of Things, this Internet of all things. Machines, animals, humans, to be all interconnected wirelessly, talking to each other, to create this smart grid where all the smart technology can work together. So our smartphones, smart meters, our smart cars, all our smart appliances. And interesting thing that's said about the smart grid and this is that it actually has faster reaction time than a human. That these machines can react more quickly than a human can. So it's going to facilitate the rollout of smart cars, self-driving cars, and self-driving fleets of trucks are being rolled out. So the look on your face, I know. It's kind of a scary thing to think you could be driving down the highway and look up and see a truck beside you with no one behind the wheel. But it's already happening, where these self-driving fleets of trucks are moving from one destination to another. And of course it's all based on this wireless digital technology, and the 5D is going to make the reaction time of things quicker.
The direction of this is that our every waking moment will be analyzed, scrutinized, our future actions will be predicted, and businesses will buy and sell and trade that information in great detail, and that's how Google made all its money, really. And this was only possible, and this is why the previous things were not on the same scale, because previously there wasn't enough computing power in order to track the actions of 1 billion people, but there is now.
Very scary. Yeah. So all the appliances that we're acquiring in our homes, connecting to the smart grid, collecting all the data around us, monitoring everything we do, all our movements. It's like having 100 spies in your own home. And, you know, it's information about us, and if somebody can hack in to your network, then they've got all this information about what you're doing and the movements you're making. There's also the one of the justifications is remote surgery. Having digital speed on this level will allow doctors to do surgery remotely. I can't understand why surgery needs to be done remotely, but that's being heralded as one of the things. It sort of sounds like a new form of a video game where you go on a computer and perform surgery remotely, which I find kind of ironic because, you know, you're doing this surgery to help one person while at the same time slowly cooking and killing many others because of the technology that's being used.
Again, you know, I want to really stress, I'm not against all technology, but I'm against technology where the bargain is not good for us. And I think we need to be more critical each time we're offered something, that we do a proper analysis. That's all. Make an informed decision. We're making a lot of uninformed decisions, which generally does not serve us well in this life.
Yeah, in the end, it really is ignorance.
Ignorance will not be bliss. Not in the end.
No.
In the short term, it will be, though.
I think of the lamenting Old Testament prophet, Hosea. My people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. People are destroyed for lack of knowledge. That's really the root of our own destruction, is lack of knowledge. And we're not necessarily being given all the information around this. In some ways, the industries that are building this don't want the information. They don't really want to know. So this is one of the reasons why there hasn't been extensive long-term testing done. So they don't really want to know because they don't want to be held responsible. So one of the... Sorry?
I listened to an interview with a guy by his name is Tom Wheeler. Tom Wheeler was, until I think fairly recently, the head of the Federal Communications Commission in the United States, which is really, theoretically, the federal body that should be looking at these things like 5G. If you listen to this, speech that he did to a meeting of, it was primarily cell phone electronic equipment providers. He basically said, it's too important to be first. We don't have time to do any testing.
Yeah.
Now, that said, to be a little more cynical, they already know what it's going to do. It's just, if they were to do testing, slows it down, and you're only building, opposition to it. So, if I was them, I'd probably be doing the same thing.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's become a big race. It's like who's first out of the corral, and that's kind of become the spirit of it. It's like who can roll out more of this sooner, faster, in this race to cover every corner of the Earth with this technology. It's on the same level as the space race was back in the 60s to see who could put a man on the moon sooner. And so, the countries, the US and China, are all like giddy with this idea.
Look at this from three directions. One is what's happening, and is there a way to stop it? And there already are some actions to stop it in the local areas so far. Secondly is avoidance techniques. Thirdly would be ways to ameliorate the problem should it happen. So what's the old line, hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So that's kind of my policy. So I'll just give you, kind of what I would say is a minimum. So here's the minimum to me to go forward and deal with this. The minimum in my mind would be this. You need to have a time in the day where you are not exposed to these kinds of fields. It can't be 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, year after year. This will not end well for you, even at the field strength that it's now. So where I go back to is your sleep time. So you need to make your sleep space as low EMF as you can. I'll give you some low-cost ways to do this. The easiest one, if you have access to the electric panel, wherever you're living, you need to turn the power off at the panel to your bedroom. And this is not the same as just not having anything plugged in when you go to sleep. This is like I'll just give you an experiment that a friend of mine did with me at my house. And I'm laying on my bed. There's nothing on in my bedroom. There are 4 outlets in my bedroom. 2 on the left side of the bed, 2 on the other side. Nothing right by my head, but within a few feet. He put on what's called a clamp meter onto my finger and checked what voltage was running through my body. So because there's electricity running through the walls to the outlets, like people say, well, it's not on. I say, well, I'll tell you what, why don't you take your finger and stick it in the outlet and tell me there's no electricity, okay? Anyways, he got a voltage doing that of 2.2 volts. Okay, keep that number in your head. So I'm still laying there, he's still doing this. He had his wife go to the electric panel, turn off the power at the panel to my bedroom. 1 fuse. Breaker, actually. And then measured it again. And I was in the same position, everything's the same. It's just panel, there's no power going through the walls. That 2.2 went down to 0.2. That is massive in my mind. So Sorry?
What was that?
It's called a clamp meter. So it's designed for somebody like you want to check a electric, like a pipe, and see what juice is on it. It's just got like a claw in the end, and it just like goes on and it'll give you a reading.
So you can buy a clamp meter at any hardware store? Or?
No, you'd probably have to go to like electrical supply, like a Nedco, or like somebody who sells stuff to electricians and stuff like that. Those are the kind of people. They cost about $100.
Home Depot has them.
Home Depot would have them too, yeah. And not super hard to find. Anyways, that now means that you are beginning to create a low EMF from your sleep. So if you're exposed to these fields during the day, at least you have, and so long you sleep, 6 to 8 hours, whatever it may be, of time when you can actually recover from that onslaught during the day. Now I know some people are going to go, well, it's not convenient, my phone. All I can tell you is try this experiment. Now do it very carefully because you are touching the electric panel. Please do not electrocute yourself doing this, okay? But my experience has been, this is one of the biggest single things you can do for your electrical health, and it costs you nothing. It takes a few seconds of your time. If you have a really advanced system, then you can actually get systems where the panel will automatically turn off from a remote control or will turn off at a preset time. They call them, kind of demand panels where essentially the system is set up in zones. So you might go, okay, the guy goes to sleep at 10 o'clock, turn everything off. Because think about it this way. When you're sleeping, what needs to be on?
Yeah.
Not much. Like, okay, your refrigerator. And I might even argue refrigerator, because if you don't open and close the door a bunch of times, your refrigerator can probably be off for 6 or 8 hours. It won't be the end of the world. As long as it's working properly, okay? And then, if you're somewhere it's cold, probably need the furnace to work. But everything else. So I give an example of what I do at my house. If I'm not using something, it's turned off at the panel. So I have like a dishwasher. It's turned on for about 4 hours a week. In my case, I built a sauna in my place. When I use the sauna, it's turned on. Any other time, it's turned off at the panel. So the other plus to doing this is you will begin to actually save a little bit of money on electricity if you pay for the electricity, because those devices that you think are off aren't actually off. So I'll give you an example. Televisions, all modern TVs are never really off. Because what happened years ago, I'm an old guy, I can remember when TVs, when you turned it off, it was off. But then when you turned it on, it took a long time to warm up. And people complained. They said, it takes too long for the TV. It would take, say, a minute, could be almost 2 minutes to really warm up. People said it takes too long. So they came up with instant on. At the time is what they called it. Well, all instant on means is never off, really. So all that you're doing when you turn it on is you're firing up the screen. But all the other electronics has been running 24 hours a day and generating a field and sucking up your electricity. Same thing with a bunch of other devices that aren't really off. Even I might think they're off. Anyways, so that's, the most simple, practical thing you can do. I'll just give you another one. You walk down the street. Don't walk on the side that has the wires on it. Walk on the other side. Like, if it's the same to you, why not walk where you're not in a field that's inducing something that's not ideal for you? Again, there's all kinds of really practical things. I mean, the other one is nutrition. So from a nutritional point of view, most people are being heavily influenced by these fields because their field is weak. Okay? So I'll give you an idea. A friend of mine has a clinic. He does a lot of stuff with, very sick people. When he checks them out, puts electrodes on their skin, he gets a charge of about 30 millivolts. Keep that number in your head. If you go to the store and buy plastic water and put electrodes in it, you get a charge of about 30 millivolts. Interesting. Person almost dying, water, same charge. Doesn't sound good to me. Anyways, if you're sufficiently healthy, you're talking about a charge of 100 millivolts, not 30. Now you can go overboard, like the 2.2 volts was too much for me. But 30 is not enough to run the system. At 30, you're dying, basically. Okay? So, everybody with me so far? Or how are we doing? So again, a lot of this is very practical. I mentioned in here some esoteric solutions, one of which is really simple. Again, costs you nothing. Take a little bit of your time, which is utilizing numbers. We could talk for hours about numbers, but there are two numbers that relate specifically to electrical devices. One is 9, the other one is 16. There is also a use for 11, but 9 and 16 is a nice combination. So you basically take every electrical device that you have, I mean everything that has electricity in it, and you take a penknife, scratch 9 little marks, and then below that you make 16 little marks. 9 is a number that balances the field, the field of the device to you. Keep in mind, the way it's set up currently, we are tuned to the device. Not good. 16 is just a general balancing number that's great to have around you. I don't care if you want to put 16 little stones on the windowsill or, around the computer screen, 16 little dots, whatever works for you. But these are good numbers to have associated with you. Because numbers, people don't understand this. Numbers have quantitative aspect, qualitative aspect. This is a biogeometry thing that goes back thousands of years. But the qualitative aspect was kept secret from us. All we had was the quantitative. Add, subtract, multiply, divide, algebra. That was it. But that's only, I'm going to say, less than half the story. The bigger half is the qualitative aspect, and that's what I'm incorporating there and telling you.
So that's a big key. You're saying that with all these fields radiating their emissions, that we're becoming tuned to them.
Exactly.
They're changing our tuning. They're changing our frequency. They're changing our field. So
and they're not playing the good music.
Yeah, they're not playing the kind of music that we want to be vibing with. So by using the power of numbers, this is an ancient Egyptian secret, that it will get the device to tune to us. And numbers like 16 and 9 get the device to tune to our field.
Yes.
That seems like a big key.
So basically the idea is that we need to take active measures to deal with this. So again, if you have any, like I say, we're going to really go back to that experiment I mentioned about and you try in your bedroom to make that a low EMF space. Now, I'm going to ask one thing. If you do that experiment, I would request that you do it 2 nights in a row before you make your final decision. The reason being, I have had some people do this, and the first night they woke up. And the reason they woke up, it sounds a little funny to say, but it's as though there was a sound that they didn't hear until it was gone. And they woke up and that wasn't there anymore. And they were used to that always being there.
I concur. And actually, that's why when I began the talk this evening, I spoke of, there's an apparent doom and gloom, but there is potentially a silver lining within this cloud of doom and gloom, because I think things are all connected, right? And so we're talking about...
Sirius and the brown dwarf star affecting us is actually also affecting our development of technology, and it's like, there's no separation as above, so below.
Totally. So there's this, we're talking about the Internet of Things, right? The IoT, the Internet of Things, where it's really, on a technological level, it's showing what's already existing in what you could call the energetic or the virtual or the spiritual level. The spiritual essence behind everything is interconnected. So I would like to add to this IoT, Internet of Things, the Internet of Things including nature's design language. Because right now the Internet of Things is working within certain
gizmos.
bandwidths and frequencies, and we're going to take a break in a minute and come back and look at the silver lining to this cloud, because when we start to understand nature's design language and the things that are already working in the environment, in nature, in the planet, and to learn how to work with those things, the frequencies that come out of color, shape, certain motions, angle, tones, then we can add to the Internet of Things a whole nother layer. We can give it the true basis that allows it, because the Internet of Things as it is, it's working with frequencies, and that's shaping things. Like, it's all energy in motion. So it's shaping things. Now, if we can bring more knowledge, right, because it's ignorance that's going to destroy us. If we bring more knowledge, a knowledge of nature's design language, and couch the Internet of Things with that knowledge and with this technology that's been there all along, the technology that the Egyptians and the esoteric schools through time have understood, then the Internet of Things isn't going to shape us in a distorted way. Because that's the thing, where potentially it could shape us into a distorted way. As it is, it's affecting the ovaries of a mother who gives birth to a damaged child who then produces another damaged child. So it's all about using the total power of things to shape in a healthy and meaningful way. And I'm in agreement, this whole thing about the singularity and the transhumanistic idea, of joining the human with the technology that we're developing. Rudolf Steiner, I've been studying this for about a year and a half now, had some very interesting things to say, surprisingly, about the relationship between the human being and technology, machines.
Yeah.
And because machines are evolving where they are working on a vibrational level, and we humans are working on a vibrational level. The vibrational level is actually the etheric level. It's the etheric level above the physical. And so when we learn to master, control, manipulate, however you want to put it, this etheric level, then we can interact with the vibrational field of a machine. But he within his work, he stipulates that it's a moral relationship. At the core of it, there has to be this moral relationship through our own moral development that is going to interact with the machines. Otherwise, things can go wrong. Things can fail. Things will just continue to shape, but they'll shape in a distorted way. So this is what we want to look at after the break, in bringing forth some of the information of biogeometry and Egyptian energy science and whatnot, because like, for example, my smartphone here has been corrected and balanced using biogeometry. So has my modem, using different devices, where actually it's better for me to leave my modem on because it's broadcasting beneficial frequencies now rather than detrimental frequencies that are in a way piggybacking on the Wi-Fi signal, which is putting beneficial blanket in here and also to my neighbors. So this is the ignorance that could kill us if we continue to be completely materialistic in our view of things and refuse to go beyond that into the metaphysical and realize there's other laws we have yet to learn about and employ as we giddy along here with this technology that gives us faster download speeds. I can download my pirated movie in 2 seconds. It's like, woo!
I've been laying awake night waiting for that
like
5-second movie download. I don't know how I've been living without it. But
No.
I wanted just to mention one little thing when you're talking about things being connected. There's a wonderful website called Electric Universe, which I really recommend.
Yeah.
and
Me
they
too, me
do
too.
often pictures. One of my favorites is, usually when you see pictures out in the universe, like there's a bunch of dots and then there's this like a lot of black. But that's only because of the frequencies that have been chosen for the pictures. We're usually looking at visible light pictures. So I carry around with me a chart, which is basically all the frequencies. Because I'll talk to people and they'll go, well, if I can't see it, I don't believe it. So I'll go, okay, here's all the frequencies. Here's the little sliver of visible here. So, I would say to somebody, is this truth? Yes. But I would secondarily say it's only a small portion of the truth. Anyways, back to the picture. So this is a picture that's showing you the energy links. It's really more of an electromagnetic map of the universe. And it's like incredible. Nothing is separated from anything. So this is not a figure of speech. This is actually truth that can be seen scientifically. But it's only because, again, we've been limited in how we portrayed the information.
So, you guys asked, or I asked you in the beginning whether you wanted the good news or the bad news first, and I kind of ignored what you said and gave you the bad news first about the 5G. But really the bad news is good news because in the end, maybe we can have our cake and eat it too. Like we are evolving technology, incredible technology. Like it really is amazing. It really is beautiful.
Well, we think
in a
so,
way.
at least. Right?
Well, we think it's amazing. It is amazing what we can do. Here I'm being watched like all over the planet. Like, I don't know where I'm being watched from, but I'm letting people spy on me. And, but truly, it truly is an amazing age that we live in, and it's really happening at lightning speed. Lightning, the electric age. But we want to turn our attention now to the good news and aspects of the esoteric things, the things that we don't know, things that we don't know, we don't see, that could be employed more in balancing the situation of things, the internet of things. And I've been enjoying reading this book called Heaven's Mirror. It's a photographic journal put together by Graham Hancock and his partner Santa Fea. And it's their quest for the lost civilization. And on so many of the pages, there's obelisks and pillars and menhirs, which are standing stones, temples, pyramids that are pointing up into the sky. And in a word, they're like antennas. They are an antenna that's connecting the Earth with the cosmological forces.
And a broadcast device.
They're broadcast devices. They're transceivers that allow beneficial energies to be communicated. It's about communication, ancient forms of communication, and that's what we're talking about here tonight. Is 5G being a current that allows communication to take place, and that's what we want. It's primarily a communication on the horizontal level of things, whereas this ancient technology with these standing stones and obelisks and cathedrals were really to connect the human with cosmological forces on higher levels, the divine forces, whatever you want to call them.
Maybe a little more uplifting.
Uplifting. But in the balance of things, we need both the horizontal and the vertical. And in the end, really, we are the communication devices. We are the antennas. This is the picture to develop in the good news side of things, is that the Earth has produced us. The Earth has produced us. Gaia has produced us as antennas, as pillars of the Earth to stand between the cosmos and the Earth, as communication devices. And so the more we can bring that picture of who we are, rather than kind of the dumbed down picture that Western modern science is presenting to us, from grade 2 on, of being just, a bag of bones or a hairless ape or whatever, that we have much more. So we have much more to us, and in a way we do need to look back into the past to retain that picture and to understand the powers that they had in the past, that they had in these lost civilizations, that they had tremendous power that we need to recapture, we need to regain. And so I'm very thankful for the training I've done with Dr. Ibrahim Karim, who is the author of this book, Back to a Future for Mankind. I love that title. Back to a Future for Mankind. Biogeometry, which is a new qualitative science that he has developed over the past 40, 50 years that I've trained in, and Laura Story's trained in, and our anonymous guest has trained in. And so I'm going to turn it over at this moment to Laura Story, who is going to share a little picture of what biogeometry has to offer in the balancing of things and how we can couch the Internet of Things in the all-togetherness of everything. So, Laura, you come on over here and get on camera and
Assume the throne.
give us the story.
I will try. It's funny because I actually am going to tell a story. How many times have I heard this? I don't get sick of it either. Yeah, so thank you so much for having me here. It's just kind of recalibrating on what was all said in this, looking at this picture of like, wait a second, no, it's fear, and I was holding this word fear, and I was going, okay, yeah, because it excites me when there's fear. It kind of excites me a little bit because it means that we're not in sympathy anymore. So sympathy, dreamy, oh, everything's great and fine. That scares me. I have fear for sympathy, too much of it anyways. So we've kind of gone from this like sympathetic place, doesn't matter, it doesn't affect me, to, wait, this could affect me? Whoa, I have fear, I feel fearful of something, that my privacy is being invaded, but that excites me because that's just kind of the second step on the journey. The third step being the actual awakening that I believe you were speaking to earlier, that is, oh, I'm the thing that I'm waiting for. Jesse says, I'm this antennaness. I'm the technology that I wish to see in the world. I have to create it on the physical. I'm not quite there in the verticality yet, but I'm the thing. I'm the one who can download the movie in 1.2 seconds or 0.9 seconds. I'm the one that can do that. So the inner technology that I think can be birthed out of this, the antidote to fear, faith. This faith that there is hope, that there is a silver lining. That was kind of something that brewed from the conversation earlier. And this faith that I have some kind of responsibility, that I'm not just a bag of bones, but that I'm here for a reason and I can do something with what I have. That's huge! That's huge. So I see this work, this emergence and this race that's happening as really a race in our verticality. A race for our antennaness. Because the counter, the flip side of it manifesting in this technological outer way is it happening in the technological inner way. Woo! So, and I love this picture of what happens, in Egypt, how this wouldn't have been created in their culture because it is detrimental to living organisms. And that's what's exciting about where we are now, is that we can create it. We have incarnated to an extent where we can incarnate things. Our free will, the I am, is closer to the inside, and we can do things that are detrimental. Because, as we know, the next step is to rectify it, is to take it up into a higher level, to rectify it, to transform it, to evolve it into a higher level of consciousness. So yeah, it couldn't have happened in Egypt. It can happen now. So we're exercising that free will, and we can also come into our own verticality more. So I get pretty excited about this stuff, even the doom and stuff. It just, there's something of fire inside of me that starts. It's like, yes, and... So, anyways. I'm going to tell a story. Once upon a time, in a land far, far away, Homburg is its name, this rural town in Switzerland. There lived these people, and in their town, one day, the Swisscom, the telecommunications services, decided to put an antenna, a mobile antenna, inside their church tower, the bell tower. Oh, up until this point, this rural town was quite beautiful and majestic, with the rolling hills and the beautiful green grass and the community vibe that all works together. And it was this microorganism that was operating quite successfully. And then this antenna came in. And what started to happen? But things changed. Things changed for the humans. They became ill. They had headaches. They felt dizzy and nauseous. They couldn't think. Lack of communication with the children and lack of concentration. There was fights happening between people, and anger and aggression started to bubble up in this community. It was very odd. A community that was once quite peaceful. And then they started to notice something change in their environment. Not only was this happening internally, but the animals started to disperse. So all these migrating birds, nowhere to be found. All these little creatures that come by in the wild, nowhere to be found. How can this be going on for so long? And then the plants, they started to die and wither. This is a rural farming agricultural community. Their economic potential, their whole livelihood is dependent upon the animals and the farming and the crops. Very interesting. What could that be? Even the farmers noticed that there was fungal diseases occurring in the stomach and the uterus of the cows. So the cows had to be slaughtered at a rate that's just unheard of. And they couldn't reproduce. Oh dear. What were they to do? Ah, thought the government. I've heard of a man down in another land that knows what to do with things like this when there's no explanation. So, this gentleman, Dr. Ibrahim Karim from Cairo, the biogeometry birther, was invited to come to this little rural town in Switzerland by the government. So, Dr. Ibrahim Karim went to this little town. He listened to the people, he observed what was happening with the tree life, trees dying and trying to get away. You know, we know that with crossings of detrimental energy, the tree can create, there can be cancerous, oh, I'm sure Bob can tell,
Rob?
Doug can tell us all sorts of cancerous stories with the trees that he's seen, because they start to change. They no longer are growing in a erect vertical manner, but they start to go around this seemingly invisible space, and it can be seen from miles and miles, these trees. So they brought this man to this land. He listened to the people, he observed. Well, everyone wants this antenna to be gone. Get rid of this thing, it's horrific. He thought, I have another plan. We're going to leave the antenna, and we're going to bring something else in, something that can harmonize, that can alter its frequencies and what it's emitting. So unlike the scientific paradigm of our day, which is cause and effect, and when you want to change the effect, you remove the cause or bring in something else. Here, we're not removing the cause, but rather we're able to alter what the cause is emitting. Qualitative. So they were able to change the qualitative aspects of the cause, which then changed the effects. And by golly, after he did this, people started to communicate again in friendly manners. The animals, the migrating birds, came back. The trees started to grow, the plants came back into life, and 60% of all medical symptoms nowhere to be seen. Wow, said the government. I don't understand how he did it, but something has changed. In fact, it was such a success that the government of Switzerland invited him to do a full national scale biogeometry. Wow.
Yay, Dr. Kareem.
True story, right?
This is a true story.
That's not the end, though.
Well, that's really just the beginning of his work in the world and the work that we do in the world. As Jesse mentioned, I'm a graduate of the Advanced Biogeometry training, and I offer services where I can go in with the ancient Egyptian energy science, go into people's homes, cottages. I work on cars, offices, tree houses, you name it, I've been there. All sorts of environment, as Doug was saying, it's really looking at the environment of a full holistic view. And work with the Homburg emitter. And from the Miracle of Homburg story, Dr. Ibrahim Karim created this Homburg emitter using shapes, as Doug mentioned, shapes, colors, sounds. We know the frequencies of these that can alter qualitatively the emissions of frequencies that are detrimental to living organisms. So out of this story of traveling to the land in Switzerland, Dr. Ibrahim Karim was able to identify tools that would directly impact the quality of wavelength. And now we can work with these tools, we can work with them one-on-one with devices, we can work in an entire room, we can work in an entire house. It actually gets larger than that. You can work on the power generating devices themselves. And that's what he's done and continues to do. Mm-hmm.
Does this mean that we could set up some Homburg emitters on all the 5G satellites in the city?
Do you want me to get mine?
Yeah,
Sure.
people should see what
Yeah.
it looks like.
And just
So Jesse's just getting his Homburg emitter so we can show everyone what it looks like.
What's the spelling?
Hemberg. Yeah.
That's the name of the town in Switzerland. Homburg.
Yes. Thank you.
Huh.
So this is the Homburg emitter.
So a combination of shape and number. It's not the substance that it's made out of, it's actually just made out of plastic. It could be any substance, but yeah, it's all based on nature's design language, which is number, shape, angle, color, tone, pitch.
Mm-hmm.
These are very powerful. They're directional, just so people know.
Yeah, so it's actually, I had it in my window pointing at the cable box across the street. There's these metal boxes that are hanging on telephone poles that have all the wiring and the hardware for cable boxes, and there's no levels, there's no set levels for the emissions around cable TV boxes, but they do put out, noxious emissions. So I have it in my window, and that's the principle, is that it's directing the shape and number information to change the qualitative essence of the field. The field is still there, but it's and you can quantify the field if you went there with a meter. You can see the quantity of the emission, but the quality of it has been changed from something that's detrimental to something that is beneficial. So this is the ancient Egyptian magic we're needing to bring into modern times.
Just to give you a quick teaser, there were usages to take the water of the Nile and direct it to be changed and charged. That's part of the reason why the Egyptians at their peak, they got 4 crops a year. And it was also to the refreshing from the flooding of the Nile. So fresh topsoil was placed on these crops every year. So, yeah, again, a lot of ritual purpose and also an energy broadcast. So that's part of the reason why, the pyramids were covered in which is no longer there, of course, like they would basically shine like the sun, and it was a crystal. They were basically broadcasting frequency. So, again, a lot of these standing stones we were talking about before, these are all designed to broadcast. And, in Ireland, you'll see these towers and these standing stones. They were designed to change the consciousness of the people, but also to improve the fertility of the crops that were produced in the area. So, yeah.
And yeah, ultimately, at the end of it, it's the quality of consciousness that a human has within their heart, soul, mind. So, we're working with this technology known now as biogeometry to ameliorate the forces that are not only affecting us physically, but affecting our consciousness. Back then, you're right, they didn't have to deal with telephone towers and modems and things like that. It was really to heighten the consciousness of the people, particularly the initiates. So an example of how this technology was used back then, in the Great Pyramid in Giza, on the Giza Plateau, the largest of the pyramids, there's the chamber there. It's known as the King's Chamber, and a sarcophagus. But there's also these shafts that are in the middle of the pyramid that the Egyptologists can't really explain what they are, because mostly the Egyptologists think that these are really grand tombs for pharaohs. But the shafts are pointed in a certain direction to a particular place in the sky. Of course, the sky is changing all the time, but when they're built, they were built at a particular time to connect with a certain place in the sky, because the sky is the same as the earth. It has energy wells. Like there's energy wells on Earth, and there's ley lines, and there's also ley lines and energy wells in the environment, in the atmosphere. And so these shafts would be set up with little doors that would determine the length of the shaft. And so in a sense, it became a sound box with a particular frequency, right? If you have the length of a string at a certain length, it's a certain sound. If you change the length of the string, it's a different sound. So these shafts had these stone doors, so they could change the frequency in the shaft, which would then be turning the chamber into a sound box, and that would affect the consciousness of the initiate going through initiation. Like, that's really what it is at the end of the day. It's all about our consciousness. That's what we're here for, right? So whether this tool's used, these nature's design language of shape and length and sound, color, used for initiations, or whether it's used to correct the energy on a cable box, it's wide open.
It's all an initiation.
Yeah, it's all wide open right now to work with it. So we have to overcome our ignorance of this. Otherwise, it is going to shape and distort us and make us unhealthy, as it is already. By the way, if you want a good documentary on the 5G, there's one called 5G Apocalypse, The Extinction Event by Sasha Stone. It's a well-produced documentary, and I think it's so ironic that, in the Egyptian pyramids, some of them were set up to enhance immortality, because when you're working with beneficial frequencies, it will preserve life. Things that are biological will be preserved. Mummies will be preserved longer. And the Egyptians kind of had this obsession with prolonging life even after death. So I find it's ironic that this documentary is called The Extinction Event. Like, people looking at the abuse of this energy, it's going to bring about extinction. But really, when we work with the right powers, it can enhance the longevity of life. So Doug, you're Doug, right?
Yep.
This would be the spot where you could really talk more about your work with biogeometry and what you know that can be used for beefing ourselves up, as it were, for the 5G rollout, if it's going to happen. Some people say the switch may not get turned on. Like cities like San Francisco have banned it, and Brussels.
Well, there was a law actually passed in California. This is probably the most interesting one, which basically said that local governments have the right to choose whether that infrastructure is put in place. That's a pretty big deal, because to give an example, here in Canada, cell phone towers are controlled by Industry Canada, who basically goes, I think they call it, Section 6 or something like that, which basically says if you don't cook the tissue, nothing is happening. That's basically it. I mean, it's cloaked in a little different language.
It's also called Who's Sleeping with Who Tonight?
Well, I guess it could be that too. Anyways, again, I didn't want to portray too much, doom and gloom. My whole thing in life is basically this. We have often, in excruciating detail, reviewed all the things that are messed up. Okay? There's a lot of the topics that I feel like I don't actually want to review anymore because I've reviewed them enough times. So there really always comes to me only one question, and the question is this. Are you going to do something, or are you going to circle around the drain? So in my point of view, I'd rather do something. So in terms of doing, I've talked a little bit about it, and some of this was in the handout. There is some newer material, like I'm going to a biogeometry conference at the end of this month in Victoria, and
apparently there's going to at that conference they're going to announce new biogeometry technology
specifically for 5G. 5G. Yes,
Yeah.
It's exciting.
So,
because I don't know if the Homburg emitter, is really the right tool for it.
I think you'll have a variation on that. I'm guessing here. All I would say is that,
Different
Dr.
numbers, different shapes.
Yeah, Dr. Karim is a really I've met some pretty bright people in my day, but he is operating in another world. He likes my experiences while I'm working on developing all of the other tools and seeing them work. A lessening of our exposure to some of these fields, I think, is wise. Again, I'm not saying that we can't evolve and can eventually, work with it in some way, shape, or form. My other concern is that the people who are generating this world, in my opinion, do not have our best interests at heart. Steiner, he views them as basically he views electricity as a low-level entity, definitely not a high-level entity.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to talk just in general about electricity is that I think what we don't understand is that the electricity that we have around us is not the only potential way electricity could have rolled out. I'm going to take you back to the days of Tesla and Edison. Then I'm going to take you through the fact that, the electrical grid here in in this part of North America, particularly upstate New York, here, Hamilton, Toronto, that grid was developed like 100 years ago. So, and what's happening is, it would be one thing if the waves, put on an oscilloscope, if we were getting this, it would be one thing. But that's not what comes out of the outlet. What comes out of the outlet is this. And at a cellular level, that jaggedness is what's disruptive to us. Not so much the 60-cycle reversing. That's a little bit of an issue, but our body can actually adapt to that. But this roughness of the waveform is very challenging. It, in a certain sense, I'm a music nut, and it's the whole thing between an analog sound and a digital sound. So again, put it on the oscilloscope. Digital is a bunch of stair steps, analog is a wave. And again, we're talking about how electricity could have evolved. So understand, Tesla created the AC, did the first, installations at Niagara Falls and so forth. But what happened was he got to a point where he realized that he didn't need wires. But the problem was he had created a world of wires and made a lot of people very rich selling motors and wires. But he had no interest in it, which is why Westinghouse eventually failed to finance his research, because Westinghouse was going like, no, we're making millions of dollars doing this. We're not it's going on some other completely different path and restarting. But his original idea was basically you charge the ionosphere, and eventually it reaches a certain point, and you want electricity, you just stick up an antenna, and you can draw. You don't have, and that would, of course, that completely blows out any hierarchical system of organization, because now you don't need cities. You can have power in the North Pole, no problem. So,
His intention was for it to be free, too.
well, yes, and that's of course even more, heretical to power and control structures. So, anyways, back to the things that people can do, because I want to make sure that I end, kind of talking about that. In that, I do believe there's all sorts of things that we can do. I just think that we really need to go into this eyes wide open, because I do not believe that the forces that are pushing 5G are doing to help us evolve. Can that happen? I'm not going to say it can't happen, but I don't see that as their mission. Now, sometimes forces get utilized for greater fields than they understand as they go through doing their thing. I understand that. Yeah, that was DARPA, basically. So, yes.
A great exercise that we can do if we are feeling like a buildup of detrimental energy, let's say around us or within us, or we kind of walk into that room that makes us go like, oh, I don't know if I should be here, is to what's called balancing our polarities. We can do this right now. You can take your palms and place them on the brow, so this is the front portal to the third eye, and then at the back of the neck, and this is considered the the back portal to the third eye. And just breathe here. This is great to do at the end of a day. I do this in the shower all the time. You can switch your hands if you want, but you don't have to. But I kind of like to just feel the difference.
Did you say as we breathe, did we visualize the breath going through those two portals? Or?
You don't even have to
Yeah.
visualize anything. Just this and the
You set up a
connections
circuit.
of the subtle body
Yeah,
is
there's a
plenty.
subtle sense, definitely.
Yeah. So it's like at the end of the day when you've been looking at a screen, it's great. You know, in the middle of your day, something disturbs you and you feel agitated or irritated. This is another great time to employ this. Balancing your polarities, your electromagnetic polarities. Very important.
Prior to that, I was, I don't know if anybody could feel his subtle effects of this. I've got a biogeometry tool called a cone pendulum, where I can set the level of the plate here that will change the angle between the tip of the pendulum and the edge here. So you can see it obviously changed the angle, and at different positions it correlates to different colors of the spectrum, including some non-visible colors like infrared and what they call negative green, which is just the opposite of green. And so one could place it at different positions and then put it into a spin so that it becomes an emitter. The vortex field of this is emitting into the field of the room, and you may feel yourself showered or touched by this. So I'll often get up in the middle of the night and sit and just sit and spin this at whatever level. I use a dowsing method to determine which place to position this, but I'm going to spin this for a moment, and you can tune into it with your third eye. So again, we're working with angle and shape to send out beneficial energies to correct the quality of other energies. So there's also, you know, you don't have to necessarily buy tools. There's lots of ways to do this without spending money, as Doug has explained. But a good place to start is with Dr. Kareem's book on biogeometry. He's got a second book that came out last year that works with the whole area of biosignatures. Biosignatures is specifically working with shape, different shapes that can be applied to the body or to an environment. When they're applied to the body, there's different shapes that correlate to different organs, because shape, you know, form and function go together. Form and function. So if you have this kind of form, it's for this kind of function. So you apply the different biosignatures to help with the function of the organs.
I mean, just to talk a little bit about biosignatures, because I really did a lot of work with biosignatures. Like when I discovered them, I just went like crazy with them. So I do things where basically I scan somebody remotely, so could be on the internet, in person, from a picture. I can do it from thought, but I find the thought one is a bit hard. And then basically I'm looking to see what a person is out of resonance with. And then once that's complete, then I basically send them homework. Like, here you go. This is what you need to work on, this. And then, you know, they need to basically imprint it, which they do by hand copying it in pen on blank paper multiple times. Like each symbol, do 30 times, fill a page. Next symbol, 30 times, fill a page, that sort of thing. And I've had some amazing results with doing that. Like, And I'm not talking just people. I've worked on animals, buildings, suitcases, websites, like all kinds of stuff. It's really not very limited in what you can work on if you really, delve into it. So
These shapes, they actually open up portals to transcendental realms. This is the fascinating thing about working with shapes and patterns, is that we see kind of random shapes and patterns in the physical world, but there's no such thing as a straight line, perfectly straight line or a perfectly curved line. That's just an idea. So the idea of a perfectly straight or curved line is on another level. It's on a transcendental level. And one of the reasons I have my wall here covered with this patterned cloth and this thing here covering a television. These are Shipibo patterns that are drawn on cloth by the Shipibo people of the Peruvian Amazon, because these are the sorts of things you see when you take an entheogen like ayahuasca. You go into that transcendental realm and connect with the power of the patterns that are behind matter, that are behind nature. And colors, like when you take an entheogen, you're going to see non-physical colors. You're in a dark maloka with your eyes closed, but all of a sudden you're immersed with scintillating colors that are being observed through the third eye and these patterns. But not only that, that's where you connect with the beings, the beingness that's behind matter, that are connected to these patterns, that are helping to shape the natural realm. And a friend here was referring to the elemental beings that are spiritual beings that are involved with, we call them elements because they're elemental beings because they're connected to the elements. In Dr. Cream's book, he refers to them as the netters. That's an Egyptian term that refers to the gods or the elemental beings that are connected to nature's design language. And so this is not a mechanical approach by any means. This is important to understand that this qualitative science is not a mechanical science the way quantitative Newtonian science is, but this Goethean science, qualitative, is non-mechanical and requires really our full presence and participation in it. It requires that we bring consciousness to it, as well as morality. The morality of our heart and our total being, because we're coming into relationship with other beings that we need to partnership with. We are in partnership on this planet with hierarchies of beings that are also evolving. They're here to evolve themselves and their own consciousness. And so in closing, I just wanted to make deference again to Rudolf Steiner, who's been a great teacher of mine, and a visionary and clairvoyant who produced a great body of work during his lifetime known as anthroposophy, which is a spiritual science, and how he spoke of the different cultural periods in history, and that our current cultural period needs to be mirroring that of the Egyptian times. The Egyptian times. Huh?
We're recapitulating Egypt.
Exactly. We're recapitulating Egyptian consciousness and understanding on another level, on a higher level. We're taking it to a higher level than what they had. There was a fulcrum time during the Greek and Roman period, which was very much in a dense time of matter where things were concretized, so much so that they were sculpting in marble the human form. That was,
Yoga.
and then now we need to re-spiritualize. We need to come out of the density of that era, and in this era to use the Egyptian powers, the Egyptian energy science to evolve ourselves forward. So I agree, everything's organic, everything's connected, but if you're going to make a cake, you have to have the ingredients in the right measure, in the right proportion, in the right scale. Otherwise, the cake's gonna be a fail. You know, and the ingredients have to be, you know, like we take food in and we defecate out poop. You wouldn't want to do it the other way around. You wouldn't want to eat poop thinking, you know, like you're going to produce food. So it is important, even though everything's connected, we have to we have to overcome our ignorance on how to be modern alchemists, right? The Egyptian period was the time of Hermes Trismegistus, the thrice great father of alchemy. And so we really need to learn. We need to really devote ourselves to become students of this. And I encourage you to read, to study, to find the right knowledge, not the half-truths that modern Western science is giving us, that puts money in their pockets and makes us unhealthy. Everything's connected, but if it's out of balance, nobody's really going to win in the end, because nobody's going to take their money with them. I've never seen a hearse pulling a U-Haul. So now is the time to really learn, because what we learn does contribute to our immortality. Right? The Egyptians were interested in immortality and preserving what they had got on earth and taking it with them. Well, the immortality will be really the morality that we can engender within our being, that we take with us. No, nothing in a U-Haul. Thank you for investing your time in this really important subject, and I hope we've treated it in a balanced way where 5G is not something to fear. It's not something to run from. Yeah, we'd all like to have faster download speeds for our pirated movies and whatnot, and to juice up the internet of things so that we can have 100 spies running in our home environment. But there's certainly benefits to this. The internet's not going to go away. Wireless technology is not going to go away. We have to go into 5G really with a vision of what is going to be 6G.
Yes, thank you.
What is 6G going to look like? So, thank you so much for all coming out. Om Shalom, Aho, Amen, Hatuna Makata.